There's something unsettling about places that don't feel dangerous at all. No warning signs, no sense of urgency, just quiet. When everything feels normal, you let your guard down. You stop questioning small sounds. You trust that you're alone. And sometimes that trust is exactly what makes the experience stay with you long after it's over.
The first story was sent in by a man named Caleb, and it happened during a solo camping trip in northern Oregon. Caleb explained that he chose this area because it was known for being quiet during the off-season. The campground was small, surrounded by tall trees, and usually empty once summer ended. He had spent weeks feeling overwhelmed by work and city noise, and he wanted a few days where nothing demanded his attention. No phone calls, no conversations, just space. When he arrived in the early afternoon, the weather was cool and clear. The sky was pale blue, and the air smelled like damp leaves and pine. The parking area had 2 cars near the entrance, which made the place feel normal and safe at first. He assumed other campers were already settled somewhere deeper in the campground. He unloaded his gear slowly, taking his time. There was no rush. By the time he finished setting up his tent, both cars were gone. He noticed this as he zipped the last corner closed. The lot was empty now. He remembered thinking it was a little earlier than expected for people to leave, but it did not bother him. If anything, it made the trip feel more successful. The atmosphere felt calm, almost empty, the kind of quiet that feels natural instead of unsettling. He cooked a simple dinner as the sun slowly dropped behind the trees. The light filtered through the branches and faded in stages, turning the forest darker by the minute. The only sounds were the wind brushing through leaves and the occasional snap of a twig somewhere far away. Nothing felt unusual. It was exactly the peaceful break he had been hoping for. That night passed without incident. He slept deeply and woke up once or twice, but only because of the cold air. Each time, the forest sounded the same. Quiet, still. The next morning was uneventful. He made coffee, sat on a fallen log, and watched mist lift off the ground as the sun warmed the trees. He saw no people and heard no voices. By early afternoon, curiosity pulled him toward one of the nearby trails. Caleb decided to explore a loop trail that started near the campground and curved through the forest. The trail was narrow but clearly marked. Fallen leaves covered most of the dirt path, making it hard to tell how recently anyone had passed through. He walked for a while without seeing anything unusual. About halfway through, he noticed something small but specific. Just off the trail, a section of brush had been pressed down, not broken, not snapped, just flattened, as if someone had stepped there and stood still for a moment. He stopped and looked around. The forest was quiet, no voices, no movement. He scanned the ground, but there were no clear footprints leading back to the trail. He told himself it was probably nothing. Maybe another hiker had stopped there earlier. Maybe someone had stepped aside to let someone else pass. The explanation felt reasonable enough, and he continued walking. He finished the loop and returned to camp without seeing another person. That evening felt almost identical to the night before. He cooked dinner, cleaned up, and sat near the fire ring as daylight slowly disappeared. As the forest grew darker, the sounds faded one by one. First, the birds went quiet. Then the wind slowed until the trees barely moved. Eventually, it felt like the entire area had settled into stillness. Later that night, Caleb woke up suddenly. At first, he did not know why. There was no obvious sound. He lay still inside his tent, listening closely. His ears adjusted, picking up small details, the rustle of fabric, his own breathing. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. The sound of leaves and dirt shifting under steady weight. Each one sounded careful, placed with intention. The footsteps moved closer and then stopped. They were just outside his tent. Caleb stayed completely still. He held his breath without realizing it. He listened for something more, breathing, a voice, a zipper, anything that would explain what he was hearing. There was nothing. After several long seconds, the footsteps started again. This time, they moved around the campsite, slowly. The sound traced a wide circle, passing near the fire ring and then behind the tent. The person, or whatever it was, never spoke, never made any other sound. Eventually, the footsteps moved away and faded into the trees. Caleb did not sleep after that. He lay awake until exhaustion finally pulled him under. By morning, daylight made everything feel less threatening. The forest looked the same as it always had, calm, ordinary. He convinced himself it had probably been an animal. The explanation did not feel strong, but it was enough to let him pack up without panicking. As he gathered his gear, he noticed something near the fire ring, a small pile of pine cones stacked nicely together, not scattered, not kicked aside, carefully arranged. He knew he hadn't done that. The moment stuck with him. It felt deliberate in a way he could not explain. Caleb packed the rest of his things quickly, loaded his car, and left the campground. He says he has never gone camping alone since.
The second story comes from a woman named Leah who was camping alone in a remote state forest in West Virginia. Leah had a lot of experience camping by herself. She had been doing it for years and was comfortable being isolated for long periods of time. She preferred locations far away from established campgrounds, places without signs, facilities, or regular foot traffic. To her, distance meant safety. Fewer people meant fewer problems. The spot she chose for this trip required a long hike along an old logging road that had not been used in years. Trees had grown in close on both sides, and sections of the road were barely visible beneath leaves and dirt. Branches hung low, and the forest felt dense but not threatening. She did not see anyone else the entire way in. No parked vehicles, no voices, no recent tracks. That absence felt reassuring. It told her she was alone in the way she wanted to be. By the time she reached the clearing she had picked, the sun was beginning to lower behind the trees. She set up her tent carefully, following the same routine she always used. Every movement was familiar. Every step felt automatic. The forest around her carried the normal sounds she expected. Insects, distant movement, wind moving through the leaves. Nothing felt wrong. She cooked a simple meal while there was still daylight, cleaned everything thoroughly, and packed her food away. She checked the area one last time before climbing into her tent. The forest felt quiet, but it was the comfortable kind of quiet she had experienced many times before. She went to sleep early. Sometime after midnight, Leah woke up suddenly. At first, she did not understand why. She lay still inside her sleeping bag, listening. Her mind was slow to catch up. Then she realized what had pulled her awake. A cough. It was not loud, but it was clear, controlled.
human. She did not move. The sound came from behind her tent. Leah listened carefully, waiting to hear something else, footsteps, a voice, any sound that would explain why someone was so close. The forest remained silent. For a moment she wondered if she had imagined it. Then the cough happened again. This time it was louder, closer. Her heart began to race. She slowly sat up, careful not to let the tent fabric shift. Her breathing felt too loud in her own ears. She strained to hear movement, but whoever was outside did not seem to be moving at all. Leah called out quietly, asking if someone needed help. Her voice sounded smaller than she expected. There was no response. Seconds passed. Then she heard sudden movement, fast footsteps pushing through the brush. The sound came from directly behind her tent and moved along the side, stopping just short of the fabric wall. The steps were heavy now, no longer careful. A shadow passed across the tent wall. Leah froze. She could see the shape clearly, blocking out what little moonlight filtered through the trees. The shadow moved slowly, as if the person was standing close, shifting their weight. She did not hear any words, no explanation, no apology, just quiet breathing outside the tent. Her car was parked a short distance away, down the trail she had walked earlier. Without thinking too much, she reached for her keys and pressed the alarm button. The sound exploded through the forest. The alarm echoed sharply between the trees, cutting through the silence. Almost instantly, the presence outside reacted. Footsteps took off at full speed. Branches snapped. Leaves were crushed. Whoever had been there ran without trying to hide their movement. The sounds moved fast, disappearing deeper into the forest. Leah stayed completely still after that. She did not turn off the alarm until it stopped on its own. She sat inside her tent, listening for any sign that the person might come back. Nothing else happened. The rest of the night passed slowly. She did not sleep. She listened as the forest gradually returned to normal. Insects started again. Distant animal sounds returned. The tension slowly eased but never fully went away. As soon as the sky began to lighten, Leah packed up her campsite. She moved quickly but carefully, checking her surroundings often. Every sound made her pause. Nothing approached her, and the forest looked the same as it had the night before. The hike back felt longer than before. The logging road seemed narrower. The trees felt closer. She did not relax until she could see her par through the trees. When she reached it, she felt relief for a brief moment. That feeling disappeared when she noticed the driver's side door. There were muddy footprints pressed against it, fresh, clear enough to see the outline of toes and heels. They were positioned close to the door, as if someone had stood there for a while. They had not been there when she arrived. Leah got into her car, locked the doors, and left without stopping. The final story was sent in by a man named Eric, and it took place in a national forest in Arizona. Eric explained that this was never meant to be a serious camping trip. He was traveling across the state and only needed a place to rest for one night before continuing his drive the next morning. He chose a national forest because it allowed dispersed camping and because he assumed it would be quiet and uneventful. He arrived later than planned. The sun was already low, and the sky was beginning to darken when he turned off the main road and followed a narrow dirt path into the forest. He drove slowly, using his headlights to scan for a clear spot. Eventually, he found a small opening surrounded by trees and parked his car. There were no other vehicles nearby. no signs of recent activity. The place looked untouched. Eric set up his tent quickly. He did not want to spend much time outside once it got dark. He unloaded only what he needed and moved everything else into his car. He decided not to build a fire. It felt unnecessary, and he did not want light drawing attention in an unfamiliar area. As soon as he finished setting up, he noticed something that felt off. The forest was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet. There were no insects buzzing, no distant animal calls, no wind moving through the branches. Even the leaves on the ground were still. The silence felt thick, like sound itself had been muted. Eric paused for a moment, listening. He told himself it was probably normal. Maybe the temperature had dropped. Maybe wildlife had moved elsewhere for the night. He brushed off the feeling and climbed into his tent. He ate a small meal, checked his phone for signal, and lay down. There was no service. He turned off his phone and closed his eyes. Sleep came slowly. Around 2 in the morning, Eric woke. At first, he did not know why. His eyes opened, but his body stayed still. The darkness inside the tent felt heavy. He listened, trying to understand what had pulled him out of sleep. Then he heard it. Breathing. Slow, steady, controlled. It was not coming from inside the tent. The sound was just outside the thin fabric wall, close enough that he could hear each breath clearly. The rhythm was calm, almost measured. It did not sound rushed or panicked. It sounded patient. Eric felt his chest tighten. He did not move. He did not reach for anything. He focused on staying completely still. Even the sound of his own breathing felt too loud. The breathing outside continued, steady and unchanging. Seconds passed. Eric tried to convince himself there was a simple explanation. Maybe someone else was camping nearby. Maybe someone had stopped to rest. But the silence of the forest made those explanations feel weak. There were no other sounds, no footsteps, no movement, just breathing. The sound stayed close, as if whoever was there was standing inches away from the tent. Eric stared at the fabric wall, waiting for a shadow or movement. Nothing appeared. The breathing continued at the same slow pace, never speeding up, never slowing down. Then, without warning, it stopped. Not gradually, not fading away. It stopped completely. Eric remained frozen. His body felt tense, locked in place. He listened as hard as he could, expecting to hear footsteps moving away or the rustle of leaves. There was nothing. The forest returned to that same unnatural silence. He stayed awake for a long time after that. Every small sound inside the tent made him flinch. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and he must have fallen asleep without realizing it. When morning came, sunlight filtered through the tent fabric. The forest sounded different now. Birds called in the distance. A light breeze moved through the trees. Everything felt normal again. For a brief moment, Eric wondered if the night before had been a dream. He stepped out of his tent to pack up. That was when he noticed the ground. Footprints were visible in the dirt around the tent. They formed a loose circle, evenly spaced, pressed clearly into the soil. They did not lead toward the tent or away from it. They simply went around it. Eric crouched down and looked closer. They were barefoot. He stood there in silence, trying to process what he was seeing. The prints were too clear to be old. The edges were sharp. The dirt inside them was undisturbed. Someone had been there recently.
Eric did not stay long enough to look for more signs. He packed his tent without folding it, threw his gear into the car, and left immediately. He did not stop to eat. He did not take photos. He drove straight back to the main road and kept going. Eric says what stays with him most is not the footprints. It is the breathing, the calmness of it, and the way it stopped so suddenly, as if whoever had been there decided they were finished waiting.